future trends, deep insights, industry leaders. This is the iGaming Next podcast with your host, Pierre Lindh.
And good morning, everyone who's tuning in this lovely Wednesday morning. I hope you're all doing okay here today. As a starting point today, we were supposed to do this morning's podcast together with Paul Leyland, the partner of a Regulus partner, who is one of the sharpest analysts of the iGaming industry. But unfortunately, Paul had to pull out here this morning due to some unforeseen circumstances. So instead, I will gather my thoughts here together with you guys. And we also had the comments here from Paul Leyland this morning on the Evolution quarterly report that came out today. So apologies for not having Paul with us here today, but we're gonna keep it a little bit short today and talk a little bit still on a high level what the very anticipated quarterly report of Evolution entailed today as we saw it. And I'm keeping a very close eye here, at least on the Twitter comments. I'm keeping an eye on the current share prices of Evolution, Kindred, and Kambi, which is also relevant today, since Kindred also released their very anticipated quarterly report. And the reason why we also keep an eye on Kambi is because Kindred announced that they will be building their own proprietary sportsbook, which means that they likely want to extend the partnership with Kambi past 2026. So keep in mind that 2026 is a long way to go in iGaming terms. It's kind of like when you talk about dog years, 1 human years is 7 dog years, and I think 1 normal year is 7 iGaming years as well. So obviously kind of negative news for Kambi, but to be honest, it had also been rumored for quite some time that Kindred had been looking for a CPO specifically with sports betting platform knowledge. So while it may seem at first glance that these news were negative for Kambi, you could also interpret it as the fact that they still have another 4 years to be partnering with Kindred before Kindred moved on to their own proprietary sportsbook. And why is this big news? Well, it's big news because it's estimated that somewhere around 35% of Kambi's total revenue comes from Kindred alone. It's estimated by Pareto, an analyst, that Kindred is by far the biggest client to Kambi. And seeing that Kambi has lost DraftKings after their acquisition of SB Tech, the worries amongst the shareholders recently have been that there will be more kind of tier 1 operators that will be exiting Kambi's platform agreement. So that is now announced by Kindred, but again, it's going to take another 4 years here before that happened. And as we see here, a comment of that's turning in here said share price of Kambi is crazy today, and that is an absolute understatement. Kambi opened the markets which decreasing something like, if I'm not mistaken, they opened the markets with like down 20% or something along those lines. Oh, they were down 13% before recovering in the last hour 23%. So it's had a massive volatility today, and the share price of Kambi from being down 13% on these news is now up 7% on this news. So obviously extremely volatile share price at the moment, and shareholders can't seem to make up their mind. And it's a good comment here as well, that is there an impending acquisition by Kambi? It's been speculated by not only by us at iGaming, but it's been speculated by the entire industry if Kambi will be ripe to be acquired, particularly by a North American player, perhaps. And you would think that the movement of the stock could perhaps allude to that these rumors have some substantiality behind them. Let's see here, but it's a good speculation here that we see in the comment here. I'm gonna try to pronounce the name, but Simplicity, but we appreciate that feedback as well. But nonetheless, let's move over to the Evolution quarterly report here before we make a little bit of a visit to Kindred here as well. But we're gonna focus mostly on the Evolution quarterly report here. And good morning to Stefan as well. It's nice to see you here. And again, as mentioned here, I'm alone in the podcast today because we were supposed to be guested here by the all-knowing Paul Leyland of Regulus Partner, who's always a reoccurring and great guest to have on board for these type of occurrences. But unfortunately, Paul had to pull out here last minute today. So we're going to keep it short and a little bit high level. And as I usually am a curious kind of reporter on these questions myself, I'm going to try to keep things as agnostic as possible. But if there are comments or questions in the chat, I will do my best to answer them. Although, again, I am not an expert here, more than trying to read in as much in the reports as I can. So yeah, so good morning to everyone. And so the Evolution quarterly report Q4, what were the highlights in this report? Well, first of all, I think it's important to mention that this report was very much in line with analyst expectations. The analyst expected an EBITDA of 210 million euro in the quarter, and the actual result was 207 million. So it was fairly close to the consensus amongst the analysts. And even still, the share price today is down 8% as we are streaming this podcast in this very moment. Obviously, the share price is highly volatile today because seemingly it's difficult to put the finger on exactly what it is that is causing the share price to fall. I've been following the Evolution discords. I've been following the Twitter comments, and also internally in several group chats here amongst the iGaming professionals. And the consensus seems to be that the report is fairly positive. They are again in line with the analyst expectation. They obviously revealed a strong roadmap ahead now for the next quarter. Evolution has a lot of momentum in general. And something that investors might be looking at as well is what is the share of the total revenue coming from unregulated markets versus regulated markets. And that was something that me personally was thinking was going to kind of determine on how investors was going to interpret the reports. And if we look at the Q3 report from the last quarterly report, 38% of total group revenue came from regulated markets, whereas now in Q4, 41% is deriving from regulated markets. So it's an increase by 3% from regulated markets. And so that would seemingly be positive news here to look at, as the last short seller report that came out by the analyst here a couple of weeks ago specifically cited their recommendation that the share price of Evolution should be a lot lower than it is due to the revenue mix of unregulated versus regulated revenue. But the fact that Evolution has slightly increased the revenue from regulated markets and met the analyst expectations in terms of EBITDA, still has not seemingly pleased the investors here today, as we can see an 8.3% drop so far today. And we've been speculating a little bit. I was asking a couple of people here before we started this podcast why they think this drop has happened today so far. And someone pointed out that there's been a lot of speculation around the quarterly reports. Some people expected the quarterly report to be very, very strong due to this lobby data reliance that a lot of investors are looking on. So there is a website that's called Evo Tracker that is looking at the total amount of players that are active in an Evolution game at any given time, and these numbers has been significantly increasing, especially on games like Crazy Time in the last quarter and the forward-thinking quarters, and this kind of alluded to that it could potentially be a very strong report. Now, Martin Carlson, the CEO, has previously commented that we should not rely too much on this lobby data to predict what the actual EBITDA result is going to be, and seemingly he was right in giving that warning finger. So that's one point that could attribute to this drop so far today. Another comment that I got here before this podcast was that the general negative sentiment towards Evolution right now is continuing to causing harm, and potentially the fact that the report didn't really stand out in a sense could have been the last drop for some investors. Also from ESG point of view, ESG funds taking the opportunity when the volumes are high to sell off could also be another explanation here. But still, 8% drop on the report, which seemingly had a slightly positive sentiment before the markets open, I would say was very surprising to me at least. And if there are any comments here in the chat that would like to add to this, or your own thesis of why this could be, or what you think could cause this drop in share price, feel free. We are live currently on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and all these comments that you write in the comment section will show up here to the right, so I'll have an opportunity to see them as well. But please be kind to us today. Again, unfortunately, our expert here, Paul Lindh, was not able to turn up today. So again, I am very much a humble journalist, so to say, here myself, so I don't have perhaps all the answers there. And so just to go a little bit deeper into the report here as well, another thing which I think investors should absolutely look at in the following quarters will be the performance of the RNG side of things. So Evolution last year acquired NetEnt, a big RNG producer of traditional online casino games, and later on in the year, in 2021, they also acquired Big Time Gaming, which is a highly respected, albeit smaller teamed RNG casino games producer. And the expectation here from investors is, or the hope by the investors is that because of Evolution's dominance in the live side of things, that they would also be able to dominate the RNG side of things as well. Now, it hasn't been the case so far, and in fact, NetEnt and the subsidiary brands that belong to NetEnt have not grown in the same pace as its competitors. Now, that is not really a surprise, according to most industry experts, considering that NetEnt for a number of years had already lost pace against a lot of their more aggressive competitors. But as Paul Lindh points out in his email letter, this excuse, so to say, that the revenue is not increasing in the same pace as the rest of the industry can only be used for so long. And as we look into 2022, we should be able to see the effects of Todd Haushalter, the CPO, and the rest of the products teams takeover of NetEnt, Big Time Gaming, and the subsidiary brands to NetEnt. So investors should look very closely to the RNG revenues now as we go into 2022. And looking at the digital event here that Evolution premiered yesterday, where they announced that they will be releasing up to 90 games in 2022, and they announced some of the kind of top releases here, where the new game Superstars will be kind of the parade game here. Todd Haushalter called that he called it the crazy time of slots, essentially. And so now we will see if these bigger releases that have been planned by Todd Haushalter and his team, how they will perform and do here now as the bigger roadmap for NetEnt, Red Tiger, and the other RNG brands are rolled out. So I can see that we are getting some comments here as well. Tilly Narasater is asking, how long do you assume it would take to get double listed if they wish to do that? It's a good question, because, and to give some context here, there's been rumors and requests, if you will, that Evolution should, in addition to its publicly listing on the Swedish stock exchange on the OMX, that they would also list themselves in the US. So as in they would be dual listed. The reason to do that would be to let American investors more easily find Evolution and invest into Evolution, kind of removing friction in order to attract more investors into the company. And therefore, you would assume that the share price should increase. Now, there's been a lot of speculation on that, Tilly, and it's very difficult for me to say anything. Obviously, I'm not really involved in Evolution on that front. But all I can say is that there's been a lot of speculation, and the assumption from shareholders and investors are that in due course, at some point, there will be a dual listing. However, again, this is just kind of noise that is coming out, and absolutely nothing that, as far as I know, Evolution has communicated that it's not impossible that there will be a dual listing, but they haven't really given any timelines or committed them to anything else. So we will just have to wait and see on that front. And Marcus Adamson is also asking, do you know if the games that were showed yesterday are planned for the first half of the year or for the full year? And what Evolution we're focusing on are releases in the next couple of months here that we are looking at. However, they did also allude to some of the bigger releases that will come at the end of summer, like, for example, the new parade game Superstars, which they are reportedly releasing in the end of the summer, essentially. So I hope that answers the question as well. But if you want more details on the specific games, that has not been publicly announced by Evolution, so we will have to keep an eye on what Evolution communicates here in the games when they're being released exactly. So we have some other questions here as well, and some comments here. Alexander Ek is commenting that I think this is a pure play from the United States. They will continue to harm the stock until we get a listing in Nasdaq. So again, alluding to investors clearly wants and look forward to a double listing, and we can expect that if a dual listing is being announced, that perhaps that will positively affect the share price here. So this is one of many cards that Evolution holds in their back pocket to generate shareholder value, of course. So Michael Byrne is also asking here, is the quality and performance of the new recently released games a concern for investors? And that would be interesting to hear in the chat, if that is something that the investors are concerned over, or if there are any any comments on this sentiment as well in general? I don't specifically have any information on the performance of the game, other than I've heard as well from operators had a view that not all the releases during the 2021 releases have been super successful, so to say. There has been some controversy with some of the games, but again, Evolution has obviously a very stable core of games that are performing very, very well. And again, looking at the performance of games like Crazy Time, it's obviously kind of holding Evolution together in a really well way. And also Sonar here is asking about, do you think Evolution will pull out of ICE because of the showcase yesterday? And so far, what I know is that Evolution is still going to exhibit at ICE, but it's a very much a moving target, the conference at the moment. And in fact, we are doing a podcast that will be released on Monday or Tuesday, I believe, with Alex Pratt, who is the managing director of Clarion Gaming, where we will be discussing and clearing up a lot of the rumors around ICE. Alex had been very clear that even though we hear that a lot of the major, especially land-based casinos are pulling their attendance from ICE, the floor space is still being filled by others who are taking over that floor space. I know, for example, that our sponsor here today, Pragmatic Play, for example, are significantly increasing their footprint at ICE. So I don't think we should look into too much of the exhibitors that are pulling out of ICE without also remembering that the floor space are being filled by others who are taking much of that space. And so far, Evolution has not communicated that they are pulling out. And so far, they have said that they are still exhibiting at the conference. But obviously, anything can happen here. And there's another couple of months forward. For those of you who are new to the industry, ICE is by far the biggest exhibition in the iGaming industry and in the gambling industry in general globally. It's taking place in London in April this year, as it was moved due to the Omicron variant. And unfortunately, you could say it's being placed on Easter week, which obviously causes a lot of logistical challenges and a lot of families who doesn't wish their partner to be visiting ICE during that time of year. So it has been a bit of a controversial move here, which has caused a lot of the major exhibitors to pull out from the conference. But again, the floor space is still being filled by other exhibitors. This exhibition is very important because a lot of the B2B suppliers in the gaming industry, they derive most of their new business from this one single conference. So a lot of business is being done during this conference, and that's why it's an important conference, of course, for the entire industry. So Young Gang is also asking here, the US quarter-on-quarter growth was surprisingly weak. And yes, that is a good comment as well. So we have here, let me pull out the numbers here. So essentially Evolution, they increased revenue from the last quarter, from the sequential quarter from Q3 with 6% in total. And listening in on the investor call, Martin Carlson talked about this, and they are growing out their studios as fast as they can, and obviously it's important to point out here as well that while like looking at the US market from a macro level, the US market is obviously there's a lot of things happening in that market, and a lot of states are opening up for online sports betting, where now a majority of states are open more or less. But online gambling, which would include Evolution, is still a quite niche part of those states that are regulated. And so we haven't really seen any major movements during the year on that front with new states opening. And so I think the slowed growth can be attributed to the fact that not that many new states are opening in the US, but also due to the fact that that Evolution has to build studios in each individual state. So they are not able to, for example, take advantage of the massive studio they have in Riga, in Malta, and elsewhere in order to offer the full catalog of games. In the United States, they have to build individual studios in each state in order to offer games to customers in that state. And so growth seemingly is not happening as quick as potentially many investors would have hoped in the United States. But the opportunity overall in the United States is still massive. And according to Martin in the investor call, they are building and scaling up as fast as they can in the United States in general. Those would be my comments on that front. Speaking of the markets here as well, if we are looking at the various markets and the revenue split in Evolution, they have actually increased revenue in all geographical areas for this quarter. Whereas North America, as mentioned, has increased 6%. And as Ludde points out here, Ontario is obviously going live here later in the year. So even in Q2, the Ontario is going live. And as opposed to North America, if correct me if I'm wrong here now, chat, but as far as I understand it, Evolution doesn't need to build the infrastructure in Ontario in order to deliver games to their client base there. They are able to leverage the studios that they have worldwide in order to offer games to the local players in Ontario, which means that the players in Ontario will have access to the full catalog of Evolution live products in that area when that province goes live later on in the year. And it's obviously expected that Ontario will be a massive market here in Canada. Yeah, thank you, David, for clarifying that as well. I want to make sure here that we get things right here today. But so that's another exciting new market that will become regulated here again that we will look closely into. But again, North America up 6% since the last quarter, and I'm more curious here to look at the last quarter, as in the Q4-21 mix, since I think it's more comparable than in the last year, so to say. So we're gonna look at the growth from the last quarter here, not from the quarter of last year. So essentially, North America is up 6% on the quarter. The Nordics are up 7% on the quarter. UK up 10%. Rest of Europe 2.3%. Asia up 18%. And it's interesting to point out here that 58% of the growth in the quarter comes from Asia, right? This is interesting because the short seller report again is kind of attacking Evolution here for deriving much of their revenue from unregulated markets, and those revenues potentially should not be valued to the same multiple as regulated revenue should. Okay, so Asia nonetheless up 18% on the quarter, and then the mysterious other is up 9% on the quarter as well. And so essentially we can see an increase of revenue across the board, but a major increase in Asia on the quarter as well. And interesting as well to point out that despite the major increase of Asian revenue, we still see that Evolution has a higher percentage of revenue from regulated markets in the quarter than the previous quarter. Up from 38% was the total revenue from regulated markets in Q4-21 to 41% in Q4. Now, so Evolution again is heading the right direction in terms of the revenue split here between unregulated and regulated revenue here. So that's positive, but still, again, as we started the podcast with today, still Evolution down 8% as we are speaking right now, seemingly without much reason behind it. Again, they have been meeting analyst expectation. They are moving the right direction in the regulated versus unregulated revenue split. And showing great strides in their operational kind of investments that they are doing. We have a great and really interesting roadmap ahead, and Martin Carlesson, the CEO of Evolution, has very much spoke about in the analyst call today that they are in a building phase right now. They are investing heavily into acquiring new staff, into building their product, and they are obviously launching their own in-house lobby here as well, that I have high hopes for. And so seemingly there's not massively positive news, but it's a positive report from first glance. But still, the shareholders have been punishing the share price here as we look at the numbers as they are right now. We also have a really interesting question here. I think that's the $1 million question, right? From Christopher Leo, who is asking if you could guess what would be Evolution's next acquisition. Will it be another slot company or any other candidate? And we've been speculating on this throughout the entire year, and it would be really interesting to hear what the chat thinks as well here. For anyone who's listening on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you guys are, feel free to write in the comment section here. It's going to turn up in the window what you think Evolution's next acquisition target might be. Personally, I if I were to put my money somewhere, I would definitely say that it's going to be another slot company or any supplier related to a slot company. Like Evolution acquired DigiWheel here now, of course, which will help them to produce better live games, so to say. Johan points out here that Play and Go could be a candidate, and we have speculated on that front as well. And I would say as well that it's not a unlikely acquisition, seeing how profitable Play and Go are, and how well standing they have in the industry as well. Play and Go is very well respected in the industry. They are a machine. They have been doing well for a long time, and there could be an acquisition target here, of course. Marcus Adamson is pointing out Pragmatic, which is the closest Evolution has to a competitor at the moment. I would say Pragmatic are doing all the right things. They have been doing all the right things for a number of years and been growing steadily, and is certainly taking the position as the number two kind of slot / RNG provider behind Evolution. So those are two interesting speculations here. I think Pragmatic, if I have a feeling, if it would be Pragmatic, it would have already happened, as Pragmatic has been a bit of a needle in the eye to Evolution for quite some time. And I would expect that Pragmatic is not going to be a cheap acquisition at this stage. But again, of course, Evolution is cash rich. They have they are benefiting from a massive market cap here as well, and they are in good position with cash on hand as well. So those are two quite interesting speculation here, Pragmatic and Play and Go, and I tend to agree that it will be a company that is similar to that standing, so to say, and I would definitely expect it to be a slot provider. There's been speculation that they would acquire companies like Kambi or a sports book or something like that, but keep in mind that they still have yet to master the RNG investments that they have done. Evolution has still a lot to prove on their RNG side of things, and so to expand into a third vertical and not only a third vertical, but a vertical that is so different from traditional live casino and online casino games as a sportsbook. It's practically like investing into a different industry altogether, in a sense, as the skill set required to operate a sportsbook is totally different from what it is to operate a live casino or online casino operation. So I see that as very unlikely. But as we move into the future, obviously things can always change on that front as well, as the company develops and it settles more into the strategy and it gets more comfortable into the new roadmap that they're rolling out. So we have some other questions here as well. Henry McLean is also adding here, not another question, but he's as an interesting comment here. Perhaps a new vertical they do not currently cover to add to the one-stop shop solution. In other words, bingo, for example. Again, Henry, I think it's a great speculation and interesting here with the one-stop shop, as was that was announced here yesterday in the or it was gone more into detail here yesterday in the Evolution Digital event. Albeit I don't think this is what Evolution is looking at right now in the short term. I think in the short term they will want to master the RNG side of things and potentially buy more revenue and potentially buy competitors to increase revenue and to increase competence in-house and so on. But when they have mastered the RNG segment and vertical, not impossible that they will be looking at other verticals as well, such as bingo, which would again fit well into this one-stop shop ecosystem. You could say that Evolution is building. And something interesting that Martin Carlison said today in the investor call is that he wants this one-stop shop to be kind of the Amazon of online gambling, and potentially alluding a little bit then again to a more longer term vision here, that if you want to be the Amazon of online gambling, online gambling is bigger than just live games and RNG games. And Henry, as you point out, there's other verticals as well, bingo being one of them, of course. So Amazon started out as a bookseller back in the day, but clearly they sell all products now. And if Martin Collison wants to become the Amazon of gambling, well, then maybe he's alluding to a wider strategy in the long term. Alexander Eke asking here as well, would you rather see more share buybacks instead of increase in dividend? So for those of you who have not followed here, I'm just going to give some nuance here, because again, I'm absolutely not an expert on these type of questions, but I can give some more context, and then perhaps the chat can chime in with comments here. But Evolution, in response to the short seller reports that have come out in the recent months, which have caused the share price to fall sharply, announced a major buyback of shares here a couple of months back. Essentially this means that Evolution is buying back their own shares on the stock market, and you do that in order to increase the share price again. However, now in the investor call here in the quarterly reports that came out today, the CFO Jakob Kaplan, he talked a lot about how they will now be increasing the dividend instead, that is being paid out to current shareholders. And if that is a mistake or not, if that is the right decision or not, I am absolutely not the qualified person to answer that question, to be honest. But perhaps someone in the chat can give a better answer than I can, and strong opinions on that. That is not my expertise, so I'm not gonna pretend to give an intelligent answer here to you, Alexander. That would be unfair of me, I would say. Plus Pojken, I like the nickname. He's saying, bring in Leif Loket Olsson as the game host for bingo. And why not speculate into something bigger here than Plus Pojken? Because why wouldn't a company like Evolution, with their enormous distribution power, their enormous brand equity that they have and standing in the industry and firepower in general, why wouldn't they start like a new vertical that is more targeting the traditional like bingo lotto type audience? Like I think if Evolution wants to think a bit bigger here, it would be an interesting prospect to partner up with a TV channel or something like that, and host weekly bingo shows as what has been traditionally done in Sweden under Bingolotto, where the entire nation is gathering around basically a gambling activity to pull people into the sphere and cross sell the games. It's kind of a little bit far fetched outside of ideas here, but you never know with Evolution. If anyone is going to come up with something outside of the box, it's obviously Evolution who has the firepower in order to do that. So who knows? Maybe Leif Loket Olsson will make a comeback here after a number of years of being away from the game host of the traditional Swedish Bingolotto, the best game show that to ever exist, by the way. Ludi is asking here as well, what about the rumor with Las Vegas Sands and any other major player in the US? Is not this a nice level to acquire Evo at? Well, it's been again rumors, speculation, but these rumors have been let's say fun speculation at this point that aren't really substantiated in any way, but nonetheless, the fact that Las Vegas Sands have still not entered online gambling, and they have been waiting to enter online gambling into the right moment, and they have also communicated the fact that they will enter as a B2B and not as a B2C. And if you look at the market, which potential acquisition targets there are for Las Vegas Sands, who, by the way, are the biggest gambling company in the world, there aren't really that many options on the market that would justify, that would live up to the size of Las Vegas Sands. And Evolution is obviously, if you had the firepower, if you had the means to acquire them, obviously an excellent acquisition. But there's question marks if Las Vegas Sands is able to even formulate a bid for Evolution, seeing that they are similar market cap. And obviously, I think investors would not be happy to sell Evolution unless it is to a quite substantial premium as well. So we need to consider that as well, that the acquisition would most likely be at the same size or at a bigger size than Las Vegas Sands' current market cap. But who knows? It's fun to speculate, and it's fun to think about these things as well. But Las Vegas Sands could potentially also have other acquisition targets. I think Scientific Games is a potential acquisition target that is on a more reasonable level for Las Vegas Sands. With its, I think Scientific Games is at a market cap of like $6 billion USD, something along those lines. So it would be interesting to see. And Tilly mentioned as well, couldn't a merge with Las Vegas Sands be a better share value? Well, I would question if Evolution shareholders would be happy with a merger with Las Vegas Sands, considering the fact that Las Vegas Sands have not been able to. They haven't been able to generate shareholder value in the last 10 years, more or less. Like go back and look at Las Vegas Sands share price over the last 10 years, and you will see a quite dull graph, let's say, and then compare that, for example, to BetMGM, to MGM and other traditional land-based casinos, and you can see that most likely Las Vegas Sands need Evolution more than Evolution needs Las Vegas Sands. So those would be my comments. But of course, who knows what's going to happen, and it's fun to speculate here, of course. Again, and then today I'm gonna take one more question here, and then we're gonna also round off this this podcast today with a couple of comments from some industry experts here as well on Evolution. And Tadeo is asking what's the chances for Evo to acquire Kindred, and I would say that is very unlikely. It's Evolution is a B2B, and if we are going to look at the bigger trends of the industry, it's not exactly that the gambling companies are diversifying the revenue streams to that extent. Like look at Aspire Global, for example, who used to do both B2B and B2C. And we can now see that Aspire Global sold off their B2C in order to focus on the B2B. Also, a lot lower profit margins in the B2C side of segment. A lot more operational complexity, having to stay compliant. I see it as very unlikely that Evolution would acquire a B2C at this stage. Also, it would mean that they would be competitors to themselves as well, since they would be offering games to their major competitors. So I don't think that would be very likely. So that's some interesting comments here as well. And I want to read a short analysis as well from Robin Reed, who is, in my opinion, he is the Steve Jobs of the iGaming industry, an absolute genius of the industry. He's been in the industry for a very, very long time, and he's always in the forefront in analysis and understanding of the movements of the industry. And I asked him to put together a couple of words, what he thought about the quarterly report, and he wrote this 8:25 a.m. So it was before the markets opened today, and I think sometimes you can get a bit biased in your opinion based on what the current share price says and what the shareholders kind of first initial reaction were here. But so Robin wrote this at 8:25 a.m. today when he had looked at the Evolution quarterly report. He wrote, Evolution grew operating profit with 12 million euros sequentially between Q3 and Q4. That in 2020, that number was 6 million. So he's saying that in 2021, between Q3 and Q4, they grew operating profit twice as much as they did in the same 2 quarters in 2020. Operating profit has annually grown from 84 million euro to 171 million euro, which is incredibly strong growth. RNG grew 9% year on year, and following the investments into the backend and enabling a strong roadmap, as shown in yesterday's presentation, we can perhaps expect a faster growth later in Q3 and Q4 of 2022. Initial glance of the report looks strong to me. However, I have not checked analyst expectations, which turned out to be the results was up to the analyst expectations. And he is not sure if it will be enough to satisfy the market. With a lower share price compared to Q3 volume weighted, sorry, I'll take that over. With a lower share price compared to Q3 volume weighted one, should perhaps assume so, that it will be. He's expecting that he was expecting that the share price today would be positive, essentially. But it will be very interesting to follow their reaction. So again, the consensus here amongst the shareholders before the markets open up today was that we would see a slightly positive reaction to the markets. But again, as we are talking right now, share price is down 8.5% here. So it's quite interesting here to look into. And Crystal here, our director of media, is pointing out here that the board of Evolution has proposed a dividend of 1.42 euro per share. And Warren Buffett, who traditionally is a very dividend-hungry investor, suddenly has an eye on Evolution. I guess that is with a little bit of a wink, but yeah, who knows? So interesting comment from Chris. Guys, before we close off today, I just want to jump a little bit into Kindred's quarterly report here, which came out today as well. Also really interesting. The share price has been super volatile today as well. I think they were down around 10%. at its lowest today. Let me check here quick. They were down 6.5% at its lowest. It has recovered a little bit, and it's now down 3.7%. Interesting, because obviously the Q4 report of Kindred was expected to be very weak, and the share price during the quarter has obviously reflected that with Kindred. We can see here in the last quarter they have lost during the quarter around 35% since the announcement that they had to shut down the Netherlands market to wait for their license in that market. And reportedly, 35% of the EBITDA from the group of Kindred derived from the Netherlands market. So they lost 35% of the EBITDA from one day to the other, and so the share price has reflected that, of course. But nonetheless, the report today, some interesting things to point out here is that Kindred announced that they will be building their own proprietary sportsbook, and that has led to obviously all eyes being on Kambi here today, which is the current sports betting provider of Kindred. And not only are they the current sports betting provider, but Kindred is by far the biggest customer of Kambi, with an estimated 40% or 35 to 40% of revenue in Kambi coming from Kindred. Now, the move will not happen until 2026, so there's still 4 years before we'll see a movement. And as Carolina Pelk pointed out here as well, 1 year in this industry is a long time, and let alone 4 years is an eternity here. So you can still see kind of some positivity here for Kambi, because it had been speculated that this move was about to happen. One of the rumors that had been flying here that was mentioned is that Kindred had been looking to hire a CPO with sports betting background. So that was kind of alluding to the fact that Kindred were interested in to go proprietary. But again, it's going to take 4 years before that happens. So that was quite interesting, and due to those news, Kambi had a massive swing today. On the news of Kindred, they were down 13%, and then they swung back up, and from being down 13% on the stock market, they have regained 21%, which is incredible volatility for a company of that size. So they are actually in the green today with 5.6%, a nice little green candlestick here that we're looking at the moment. And it will be interesting to follow up to see. It might have been that I have totally missed something, but I have not seen any particular reason for this upswing actually. So it'll be interesting to see if the chat has any theory why the Kambi share price swang so aggressively into the greens today. It will be very interesting to see, but otherwise we'll follow up on that. So that's what's two pretty interesting news from the Kindred quarterly report. And also interesting to mention as well that Kindred had been on their journey to zero, as they have called it, where they want to eliminate revenues from harmful gambling by 2023. And so they have chosen to be transparent with how much of their revenue derives from potentially harmful gambling. And it has hovered around 4%. In Q3, they reported lower numbers. I think it was in the lower threes in the last quarter. But they have now reported that they have unfortunately not been able to decrease the revenue from harmful gambling further in the quarter. And in opposite, actually, the revenue from harmful gambling is now up to 4% again. So in the last year, unfortunately, Kindred has not been able to make any strides here to lower the revenue from harmful gambling. But they are staying committed to this target to eliminate harmful gambling by 2023, and they are still positive that they will be able to reach it. So again, something to keep an eye on from ESG point of view here. if they would be able to reach this target, obviously it will have ripple effects on the industry at large, where other operators would potentially be kind of requested by the investors to also lower the revenue from harmful gambling, and for the industry in general to take more responsibility on that front. So Jake Evans here, he points out something very important. Jake Evans points out that the reason why Kambi has had an upswing again in its share price, increasing by 20+%, is because they have been released from their poison pill bond with Kindred. Perhaps a target for M&A now, might go in-house for a big operator like SB Tech did. And so the speculation again is that that Kindred is just ripe to be acquired right now. They are ripe to be acquired here as we move forward. And I don't particularly have the understanding and the nuances here what the poison pill bond with Kindred means, but I would assume that it's a clause that they were not allowed to be acquired without permission from Kindred, something along those lines. But if anyone can give some more details on the details of the poison pill bond with Kindred, feel free to go ahead here as well. So those are some interesting remarks here on the Kindred Q4 report. They have decreased the gross winning revenue with 22% in the quarter, again due to the fact that Netherlands they had to shut off that market in the quarter. And so I guess we can start to round off here a little bit today. We're almost on the hour, on the minute here today. I was a little bit nervous for this podcast today, since seeing that Paul Leyland, our top experts and analyst of the iGaming industry, was not able to join us here today. So unfortunately, you were stuck here with my simple comments here. But hopefully, it has given a little bit more nuance on these two quarterly reports that came out today, which was from Evolution and from Kindred. And we still have a lot of reports in front of us as well, here with Betsson coming up tomorrow as well. So that's going to be interesting to look out for as well. And if I'm not mistaken, it's Kambi and Leo Vegas on Friday in addition to that as well. So keep an eye out for some other interesting end of the year reports coming out here in the next couple of days. And as a final comment here, Kindred would be able to convert their bond to Kambi shares, blocking any potential bid here. And so that's why obviously this is now being reverted, and potentially why the share price has now bounced with 20+% here today since that news came out. So very interesting on that front. And there's never a dull day in this industry. There's always something transpiring. That's why we love it so much, and that's why we are able to keep reporting and keep talking about industry movements. There's never a dull moment here. So to start rounding off a little bit, thank you everyone for helping me in the chat today, for helping me to bring some interesting facts and questions to light here. It's been great to go through this hour with you guys. I hope it has brought a little bit more light to these quarterly reports, and keep an eye out on iGaming Next, on our news portal, Twitter account, and so on. We will continue to summarize these quarterly reports. And finally as well, don't forget 10 a.m. CET tomorrow, we are hosting our Twitter Spaces live on Twitter, where we will have some interesting guests as well. So keep an eye out for that. For those of you guys who are in Evolution right now, who are in Kindred, the share price is not looking super happy today, but stay strong, my friends. We're in this boat together, and I'm sure we will come out of it in the long term in a good light still. So with that, thank you everyone, and have a great day.